video games. Now, where would we be without them? For many of us, our favourite handheld game we used to play under a bright lamp with 12 spare AA batteries shaped our young lives. For others, video games have helped them feel like they belong to a community. There are even those whose lives have been changed by gaming experiences they'll never forget. Basically, video games are pretty cool, right? Well, I'm Jimmy for Cultured Vultures.
And I'm Will.
And these are the 101 games we think that everyone should play at least once before the Final Destination 2 log truck comes for us all. Thank you so much for 100,000 subscribers. We could go on about how much this means to us for ages and ages.
Age of Empires 2 is one of the greatest real-time strategy games of all time and remains as playable today as it did when it was first released in 1999. Featuring a wide range of civilizations, you pick your favourite and are tasked with managing resources, defending your base, attacking your enemies, from small skirmishes to large-scale battles. It's a game that's easy to learn but very hard to master, with layers of strategy that reveal themselves over multiple playthroughs. Real-world factions and scenarios give the game an educational edge, but it never forgets to be fun. We're here to make things bleed, not to read. Skirmishes, full campaigns and multiplayer all ensure that the game has incredible longevity, and it helped define real-time strategy for a generation while continuing to influence the genre today. While over the years they may have updated the visuals slightly, they have not needed to update the gameplay. It remains deeply engaging and addictive, and there is a reason why we've used its soundtrack on the channel for many years.
Remedy seemed destined to never write that elusive second chapter in the Alan Wake story. You might be thinking, but Alan Wake American Nightmare is technically the second Alan Wake game, but you should never darken our doorstep again with that nonsense. Lesson number 1 in the class of how to get sick of clubfoot by Kasabian. Over and over again. Manuscript writing, coffee loving Alan Wake needed a proper follow-up, and in 2023, Remedy bloody delivered. Returning things to Bright Falls, Alan Wake 2 told a twin narrative of Alan trapped in the dark place looking for an escape route, and Saga Anderson, an FBI investigator brought to Bright Falls by a murder investigation. The horror is dialed up to an almost uncomfortable degree at times, with, the old folks home alone outclassing most horror games for tension and scares, but that infectiously bonkers Remedy energy permeates throughout. Show me the champion of light, we'll show you the next game.
Alien Isolation is easily the best way to experience the Alien franchise outside of the films. The Xenomorph will adapt to your behaviour, meaning every encounter feels unique. Should you remain in one place frozen in terror, or try the same tactics over and over again, then the Xenomorph will learn and act accordingly. Its retro-futuristic design perfectly matches the original film's aesthetic, complete with that chunky analog future vibe. Rather than all-out action, Alien Isolation is a game of constant dread, where fear drives every decision. Whether you choose to stay hidden or make a desperate run for it, every moment feels like it could be your last. Isolation has become the benchmark for licensed games and modern horror design. Few games offer this level of sustained, nerve-wracking tension, which is exactly why you should put yourself through it. Next up, the perfect gateway into liking dice.
So you've probably heard of the bear sex, the sexy vampire and the sexy squid man. Yes, there's a lot of shagging in this one, but beneath that randy exterior is quite frankly one of the most complete RPGs of all time, one that feels almost like a miracle in modern AAA gaming. It's a game from a beloved license that launched into early access and got the time it needed to utterly steal your life. I'm not sure how Larian pulled it off really. I mean, they made even the most dice-averse of people suddenly hooked on Dungeons and Dragons and proved a beautiful reminder of what madness players can unleash when you just let them loose. Think of whatever dumb idea you can in combat and you can probably pull it off. Just maybe don't kill the bear in the cage in the goblin camp. I'm still atoning for that one. Yes, the repetitive sound effects and jibber jabber may set off the most undiagnosed of gamers, but there's something about Banjo-Kazooie that will probably make most 30-something dudes burst into tears on the title screen. Remember when your life was just Froobs and Digimon and you didn't even know what a self-invested personal pension was? Good times. Released during Rare's banger after banger era, Banjo-Kazooie built off the back of the pioneering Super Mario 64 to provide a game where no pixel would be left unturned on your quest for every bit and bob. The almost symbiotic dynamic between Banjo and Kazooie was pretty unique for the time, and the levels themselves almost always made your lazy Sunday afternoons simply disappear. Even if you're worried about your pension or that everything clicks when you breathe, an afternoon with Banjo-Kazooie today will probably have the same effect. Arkham Asylum was pretty much the perfect Batman game when it launched in 2009 after years of spotty games. So it was a big surprise when Arkham City released somehow just 2 years later and was even more perfect. Basically the male fantasy of being a big grump and flying around a big city while RKOing baddies, Arkham City is still a near peerless open world superhero game. From the iconic Kevin Conroy to the amazing rogues gallery you'll face off against, you are the Bat in Arkham City. Still an absolutely beautiful game 15 years on, Arkham City feels like some kind of Ra's al Ghul witchcraft to look back on. It's a game that so many other games have taken bits and pieces from, and you really should take some time out of your life to play it if you somehow haven't yet. Right, so here's Bayonetta 2 summed up. You've got longer legs than a daddy long legs wearing Louboutins. Shoot stuff. Have fun. Story-wise, it's nonsense, like utter nonsense, and that's good. Bayonetta heads into hell to rescue a soul after a botched summoning goes wrong. From there it spirals into time travel, angel and demon politics, and characters talking like they've worn out their VHS copy of Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. It's just about giving you an excuse to bounce between ridiculous set pieces. One minute you're scrapping on the ground, next you're being launched into some massive over-the-top boss fight that keeps escalating. Dodge at the right moment and everything slows down, giving you space to properly punish enemies. It's a different kind of character action game to Devil May Cry, but it's just as good. Bayonetta 2 is just a very clean, very confident action sequel that might awaken something inside you. Question: when was your last cry? A good cry as well, not just when you stub your toe or farted too hard. Even the hardest of nuts, though, will struggle to make it through before your eyes unscathed. A first-person narrative adventure where you control perspective with your real-life blinks, you are a young boy recounting moments in his life as a big cat in a yellow jacket affects a southern drawl. Every time you blink, time passes. I don't really want to give away too much here, but anyone with pets is going to feel immediately targeted by Before Your Eyes. And that's just for basically the intro. Before Your Eyes is a meditation on control or the lack thereof, and sometimes why you shouldn't always hang on. There's beauty in letting go too. I wish I could play it for the first time all over again. Now, would you kindly check out Will's next pick?
Set in the underwater city of Rapture, BioShock is filled with huge amounts of lore and environmental storytelling, with its Art Deco design beautifully showcasing the city's former exuberance before its inevitable fall. In an era when first-person shooters felt brainless, BioShock wasn't afraid to explore high-concept ideas, including themes of control, free will, and ideology, and it features one of the greatest twists in gaming history. But this isn't just highfalutin Call of Duty. BioShock features fast-paced FPS combat mixed with plasmid powers, essentially psychic abilities that you gain and upgrade as the game progresses. Be it setting people on fire or launching a swarm of bees into your enemy's facial features, BioShock made you feel pretty cool. It's a perfect blend of engaging combat, thought-provoking narrative, and a handful of horror elements that makes BioShock so memorable. Would you kindly play Oh, Jimmy already did that. Something about sweaty brows?
Let's face it, Burnout is a series that EA just does not give a crap about. If we had our way, we'd get Criterion out of the Battlefield content mines post-haste and have them make a new Burnout. Hell, we'd even take just a HD port of the one Burnout game that has occupied our hearts like an exploded bus on a busy intersection, and that's Burnout 3 Takedown. Burnout and Burnout 2 were great racing games of course, but Criterion struggled to find an identity for the series. Takedown offered answers. Ruthless aggression. In other racing games, slamming your opponent into oncoming traffic was considered dirty pool, but here, well, it's both encouraged and rewarded, with every corner a new opportunity for a 10-kill pile-up. Chuck in a banger pop punk / emo playlist and the best party game of all time, Crash Mode, and it's no surprise this is a formative teenage experience. Look, many might resent the Call of Duty series for being the catalyst of the brown and grey military shooter subgenre, but there's a reason why everyone was trying to emulate COD back in the day. It was the biggest game in town, figuratively and literally. Now, we can go back and forth on which Call of Duty game is best until the cows come home, but if you want to see the series when it was at its peak, you play Modern Warfare 2. The original good one. Released just 2 years after Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, this sequel took everything about the original Modern Warfare and turned up the intensity by a magnitude of like 10. More maps, more kill streaks, more weapons and customization options made for a more complete multiplayer experience, while the campaign offers iconic moments that have stayed with players for a long time. Remember, no Russian, but let's rush to the next one. As well as just being an essential game for anyone who likes 2D games, FIFA 95 type games, or just games in general, Symphony of the Night is simply ageless. You could actually be about to die at 80 and this game will still need to be played. Richter Belmont has gone missing and Alucard stepped in to sort it, but the story mostly exists to push you deeper into the castle. Shortcuts loop back onto themselves, new abilities unlock areas you clocked hours ago, and before you know it, you've got the whole layout in your head. It's immensely satisfying to piece it all together. Slowly. Takes a while. Combat is simple but very satisfying, with loads of weapons that all feel slightly different. Then just when you think you're done, the game pulls a rather lovely gothic rug and gives you a second castle to tear through. It's still a blueprint for half the indie scene now, for a very good reason. Another ageless game? What is this? The Games That Aged Beautifully series? Chrono Trigger somehow still feels modern despite coming out in the mid-90s. You can pick it up now and it just sucks you right in. Chrono and his mates get dragged into a time travel mess after a fair goes wrong, and suddenly you're bouncing between eras trying to stop the world from ending. The fun is seeing how everything links together, fixing something in the past and then jumping forward to see what you've changed. It gives you a sense of cause and effect that most RPGs struggle with. It's also just so fun and inviting to play. You're never stuck wondering what the game expects. You're lining up enemies, combining attacks, and strategizing, but it's bang in the middle between being approachable and deep. It's also just really not that, it's like the perfect length, 20 hours. And that's really why it's essential. Chrono Trigger just nails the fundamentals so well that you start questioning why so many games since haven't managed the same. Also, one last time, Frog. And that's it.
For my money, Civilization V remains the pinnacle of the series. It's the ultimate just one more turn game, where you sit down thinking you've been playing for 10 minutes, only to realise it's actually been 4 hours and you're now attempting diplomacy with your cat. You select your civilization and build it from the ground up, founding cities, raising armies and conquering land. Or make friends with your neighbours and have a good old time. Civilization V is packed with systems like diplomacy, warfare, culture and science, all of which intertwine and shape your path to victory. There are multiple ways to win. You can dominate the world through military conquest, unite everyone in peaceful cooperation, or push forward scientifically and achieve a technological victory. It's dangerously addictive and endlessly replayable. Just be warned, once you start, you might not get around to playing the rest of the games on this list. Jimmy didn't turn up for work for 3 weeks one time.
No, it was only 2 weeks. I wish I could say it only took me that long to be digging it in Crash Bandicoot 2 though. To be fair, Crash Bandicoot 2 is a much better balanced and overall just much better game than the OG Crash, but it's still not a walk in the park, or a leap over an Aztec temple platform or something. Naughty Dog took a lot of feedback on board when it came time to, somehow just 1 year later, release a sequel to their jolted wonder. Controls were smoother, hitboxes were kinder, and everything was just refined to a precise point. Crash 2 didn't change things up massively, but it did introduce all-time classic levels like Road to Ruin and Snow Go. Whether you're returning to it after nearly 30 years or playing it for the first time, this is platforming royalty everyone should experience at least once. A game I wish my childhood friend and I got a chance to play together. Crusader Kings 3 is the best awkward marriage, siege, subterfuge, money-making monarchy simulator ever made. While it may be quite possibly the worst game to play after spending all day looking at spreadsheets in the office, there's something intoxicating about laying out all your best plans and praying that they don't go up in smoke here. What's brilliant about Crusader Kings 3 is that your hands will always be a little dirty by the end of it. Even the game world equivalent of Mother Teresa will have sold off a child or two. Crusader Kings 3 is an endless roulette of tough decisions and worse outcomes. If you don't mind 50 years of effort being undone by a bunch of peasants, you simply have to play this one. Cuphead fever might have died down, but when that original game launched in 2017, somehow nearly a decade ago, it felt like a breath of fresh air. Who knew that the secret to indie game success was a co-op shoot-'em-up that blended rubber hose graphics with, basically Metal Slug? Studio MDHR might have taken forever to capitalise on its success with a DLC release, but Cuphead deserves its place among the most legendary games of all time. A tale of two silly idiots wagering their souls to the devil, Cuphead and his friend Mugman have to fight dozens of bosses, blast away through several additional levels, and ultimately have their patience tested with this brutally hard game. This is a difficult title, no question about that, but grab a partner and have a go and you'll definitely have a whale of a time. Maybe. Talking about this game's redemption arc by now is boring, so I won't. Apart from just then. Cyberpunk 2077 is ultimately just a really, really good, properly immersive action RPG where you can give yourself metal gorilla arms and jump around everywhere in bullet time. And don't forget, bullet time is always fun time. Playing as V, you're trying to carve a name for yourself in Night City when things go predictably very awry, and then Keanu Reeves is in your noggin telling you what to think and how to feel about capitalism. Have you topped up your V-Bucks wallet lately, Choom? To be fair, this is probably his best performance in a long time. He went full hog with this one, and so did CD Projekt Red. Eventually. Come for the fun augments and fascinating world, stay for the devastating reflections on mortality and what you leave behind. This, apart from maybe Devilish on the Game Gear, anyone remember Devilish, is the first game I ever played. Sliding the floppy disk in when everyone had already gone to bed, and I definitely should have been. What a thrill ho. Look, at this point there's nothing that can be said about Doom that hasn't already been said a million times. Did you know it can run on a mortgage deed, a ham sandwich, your nan's eyebrows, etc, etc. But Doom is absolutely essential for anyone who cares anything about FPS games or just game design in general. The music, the sound effects, the secrets, the vibe, I cannot imagine where games would be without its influence. Doom was a lightning bolt back in 1993 when it launched, changing the zeitgeist as we know it. Countless sequels, homages and ROM hacks later, Doom proved that sometimes sharing is indeed caring. And hey, it's most importantly still fun now. Have you ever played a game that, when looking back, you recognise it's fundamentally changed your brain chemistry? Dead Rising is that game for a lot of us here. The opening cutscene, complete with a Willamette population line, 53,594 if you're wondering, the locations of hidden PP locations and specific weapons, or even just the silly mall music that you can hear while wandering the game. It's all in the noggin, and it's as pure and untainted as the day it entered. Controlling freelance photojournalist Frank West, you catch wind of a conspiracy in Willamette, Colorado, only to find yourself in a legally distinct take on Dawn of the Dead. Armed with a camera and anything in the mall that's not nailed down, you need to get to the bottom of this mystery within 72 hours. Or you can just strip to your skivvies and spend 3 days suplexing the undead. Madcap Capcom at its absolute best, this.
The original Dead Space felt like it came out of nowhere. It was a game that felt like the natural progression of this survival horror genre, building on the foundation that games such as Resident Evil and Silent Hill had laid. The sequel improves on Dead Space in almost every way. The dismemberment system returns, now more refined and smoother. Using various weapons, including your iconic plasma cutter, the only way to defeat the necromorphs is to tear them apart limb by limb. Dead Space 2, despite its action and memorable set pieces, never loses its sense of tension thanks to best-in-class atmosphere and sound design. And hey, Isaac is now more than a blank canvas because he actually opens his mouth. It is a stand-up sequel that builds upon what came before and is easily one of the most polished action horror games of all time. Please, please, please buy the remake of the first game so we can get this one remade too.
The first Devil May Cry set a new benchmark for cool as hell game design. Red leather coats, dual wielding pistols and sick melee weapon combos. Capcom created DMC in a lab to be the perfect teenage boy neuron activator, so when the sequel dropped and stank up the joint, it was touch and go for DMC. Fortunately, sales were good enough that a third entry wasn't immediately canned, and we're glad because Devil May Cry 3 Dante's Awakening was nothing short of an absolute triumph. A prequel to the series, DMC 3 offered a cockier, more arrogant take on the role of Dante that essentially overwrote the character going forward, while properly introducing Brother Virgil, coolest edgelord antagonist of all time, into the fold. The storytelling leveled up, and so did the gameplay, with Dante's style switching offering the most well-rounded and nuanced character action gameplay ever. And hey, DMC 5 is also pretty much on the same level. There's something about action RPG dungeon crawlers that returns people to their basest of instincts. The Diablo series is the arguable ground zero for getting generations hooked on RNG crack. Diablo 2 is where that loop properly took hold. You kill stuff, grab loot and go again, and it's still weirdly hard to put down even now. Even just a short go on Diablo 2 gives you something cool, a new weapon and level, skill point, and that drip feeds you into the next run without you really noticing that, you haven't seen your friends in months. Before long, you're deep into builds, chasing specific drops, and convincing yourself the next boss will definitely give you what you want. No, vitamin D is not necessary for you to stay alive, don't worry about it. Loads and loads of games have copied it since, but very few are simply this fun. Even the two games that followed it haven't quite managed the same magic. It's been said before a million times, but Dino Crisis is resi for those who were spellbound by Jeff Goldblum. Here, Regina's sent into a research facility to track down a missing scientist, things go wrong, dinosaurs everywhere, timey-wimey stuff. That'll do me. You don't get zombies shuffling towards you in a straight line here, you get raptors that move properly, flank you, and play dead a frankly brutal amount. In some ways, Dino Crisis is even more punishing than Resi. Ammo is really quite scarce, healing is very limited, and the game's more than happy to drop a raptor on your head at any given moment. It is definitely guilty of the survival horror trope of making you tumble dry a piece of toast to unlock a key from a nearby Tesco, but Dino Crisis captures a blend of action and horror like few other games have. And just play it if you haven't somehow. Few games also capture the horror of a very ugly necktie like Disco Elysium does. Disco Elysium is undoubtedly a game for everyone who's ever dabbled in a pen and paper RPG before, but there are a couple of caveats. Firstly, you've got to be okay with doing some reading, like several books worth of reading. You've also got to be comfortable with things going very wrong and just letting it play out. You're a washed up amnesiac cop investigating a hanging, and that's pretty much the most boring thing about this game. You'll get into fist fights with children, try not to suffer heart attacks from light exercise, and face yourself feeling personally challenged in ways that might make you uncomfortable. With a truly singular art style and a similarly one-of-a-kind protagonist, I try and play this one at least once a year. You know what, there's just not enough teleporting in modern games for my liking, or swarms of rats that you can command. Add in a really cool mask and you have one of the most empowering games ever. It's not just aesthetics that make Dishonored an essential play, but they sure do help. There aren't many games that look this captivating, especially after more than a decade. The gameplay is also still incredibly fun, with you playing as a royal bodyguard who's been framed for murder. Each sandbox within Dishonored's Dunwall has 100 different ways for you to crack them open and play around. We really don't get enough immersive sims like this anymore. 1 hour with Dishonored will show you just how big a shame that truly is.
By the time the original Donkey Kong Country came out, Nintendo had mastered the platformer genre, and Donkey Kong had kind of just been kicking around long after his 80s heyday. Donkey Kong Country was developed by legendary developer Rare, who took the character, reimagined him using pre-rendered 2D sprites, scaled them right down to fit on the SNES, and you know what? Everyone bloody loved it. Diddy Kong's quest was the natural progression from the first game, controls were tightened, level design was more inventive, and overall the game felt like a step up. Like the first game, it is tough, but the difficulty curve is fair, starting up nice and manageable before building up to some solid challenges later on. There's also Animal Antics, which is somehow worse than animal abuse. Easily one of the best SNES games ever made, and a game you need to play today.
If you've never played a Dragon Quest game before, this 2-decade-old banger is still an incredible jumping on point. Most of your time is spent roaming a genuinely open-feeling world map, spotting towns or caves in the distance and just heading over to see what's there. You'll dip into dungeons, clear them out, then roll into a new town where there's usually a self-contained little story going on. The story itself is not that complex, but its lovable characters will pull you right in. Dragon Quest VIII's legacy is basically that it proved old school JRPG design didn't need gutting to work in 3D. That cel-shaded look is still beautiful, and the tension system and alchemy pot give you plenty of room to experiment in. Come for the Final Fantasy XII demo, stay for the better game than Final Fantasy XII. Dwarf Fortress is probably the least threatening game you'll ever boot up, but it's also the one most likely to take over your life. It looks like nothing really. For years it literally was nothing, just symbols on a screen and menus that feel like you accidentally made them in HTML during IT class. Now they did update the visuals quite a lot, but you're not here for the graphics. You dig out a fortress, assign jobs, try to keep everyone fed and vaguely happy, and that's about it, until everything inevitably explodes. A bad decision snowballs, something floods, someone tantrums, and suddenly your entire settlement is collapsing because one dwarf didn't get a nice gaming chair. More stressful than your real life job, but also more fun than it could ever possibly be. Dwarf Fortress has more systems than Serge Tankian playing in space, and it's bloody brilliant. Basically the favourite RPG of every solo dev who became an overnight millionaire, Earthbound isn't the most polished game in this video, but it sure is one of the most unique. You wander from place to place, chatting to people, picking fights with whatever's causing problems, and slowly build up your party. It's standard RPG stuff, until you end up fighting an alien force and battling possessed cops and big things of vomit. Despite a lot of darkness, the daftness sticks around for a lot of the game, but by the end it's doing things most RPGs wouldn't even attempt, let alone pull off. With a gorgeous soundtrack, lovable supporting characters, and timeless art, Earthbound is a game you're bound to love. Through alternative means, goodness me. Right, so if you're wondering where the original Dark Souls trilogy and Bloodborne were, that's a hard one to miss off, or why Sekiro doesn't pop up later, it's because we're consolidating them all into Elden Ring. We really wanted to go for like a wide variety of genres and games, just so that you've got quite the wide palette to choose from, but you can swap in any From Software action RPG that you prefer here instead. But not Dark Souls 2. But for us, for making FromSoft's formula just that bit more approachable while still having plenty of deeply charming anachronisms, Elden Ring is the first Soulsborne people should be checking out. Then you can go and suffer with the older games after. The first properly open world game of the lot, Elden Ring is a bit more forgiving than other From Software games, but bear in mind that a bit here is the difference between being stepped on by a bastard and a bigger bastard. Leave the guides alone and go into this one completely blind. You'll thank us later. Nintendo and the F-Zero series seem to be at odds with each other. Clearly, the success of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe means that the gaming public at large can handle anti-gravity racing with some drifting, but making a new F-Zero game? Nah, people wouldn't like that. Let's just do Tetris 99 but F-Zero instead. They're a baffling company sometimes, though maybe they're just jealous that Sega and Amusement Vision showed them up with the phenomenal F-Zero GX. This GameCube whipper maximises the high-speed racing action of the series to the point you feel like you're in that scene from 2001: A Space Odyssey. The whole world fades away as there's nothing more than the colours on screen whizzing past your face at 1,000 km per hour. Combine that with new additions like the campy yet brilliant story mode or the ship creator tools, and you've got a definitive F-Zero experience we can at least now play on the Switch. There's a reason we keep going about this game, guys. Trying to find new things to say about Fallout New Vegas is hard, so let's rip the plaster off and start with a cliche. If you're going to play one Fallout game, New Vegas should be at the top of your list. Sure, it's not the original Fallout gameplay, but if you want to play an RPG where your choices actually matter while keeping fun at its core, this is the pinnacle. Playing as the courier, you start the game cheating death, looking to avenge your betrayal by late friend star Matthew Perry, only to find yourself in a much bigger conspiracy. You know, if you don't get waylaid from the main plot, which will happen almost immediately when you can encounter an Elvis impersonator gang, help some ghouls with their space program, or discover democracy manifest in Vault 11. Choice, discovery, consequence. New Vegas might be buggy, but it's among the most memorable RPGs of all time. Hey, speaking of.
I picked up Final Fantasy VII completely by chance, although I was aware of its reputation going in. What I wasn't expecting was to get completely hooked on a JRPG, a genre that I hadn't really been into before. Final Fantasy VII was arguably the game that brought the JRPG genre into the mainstream. It features a sweeping futuristic narrative about super soldiers saving the world and an impending planetary threat in the form of a meteor hurtling towards the world. While some might say certain emotional beats are a bit familiar by today's standard, they defined a generation, and the death of spoiler alert, and the death of Craig still hits incredibly hard. I think I covered that well. It's a rich mix of sci-fi and fantasy blended together in a way that works fantastically well. Easily one of the most influential games ever made and essential for understanding the history of the JRPG.
Yes, samurai and ninja/shinobi are very cool, but games often try to keep a separation of church and state approach to them. It's either samurai and bushido or ninja and nimbo, with no crossover, but Ghost of Tsushima broke the mold a little bit by showing us a metamorphosis. In facing an overwhelming and savage opponent, is the adherence to honour merely an anchor dragging you down? If you abandon that code, what else do you lose in the process? That's the plight facing Jin Sakai, a promising samurai finding the island of Tsushima besieged by the Mongol horde. At first wanting to uphold the samurai code of his uncle, Jin begins employing more underhanded and terrifying methods, making for quite the compelling character arc. What's more impressive though is that sword fighting and dueling is just as great as stealth, meaning players can play either or both effectively. Also, I'll never get enough of the wind as an objective marker. So simple, so brilliant. As the others aren't in this video, consider this a Clover Studio 3-fer. Beautiful Joe is a stylish 2D platformer and a love letter to B-movie cinema, while Okami is a genuine Legend of Zelda contender that's earned its reputation as one of the best games of all time. Still, around these parts, we're suckers for one game and one game alone, and it's, of course, God Hand. The answer to the question, what if a 3D beat-em-up was made by a bunch of sicko freaks? God Hand is a diabolically evil game. Difficult in a way that feels like torture sometimes, absurdly funny in an absurd way, and filled with moments that make you question what's happening, God Hand is a game like no other. It's not for everyone, but it wears that like a badge of honour, and it's why you should play it. If you're a sicko freak, it might just be for you too. You could put basically any God of War game here and that'd be fine by us. Maybe Ascension would be a push. But God of War 3 is one of the most brilliantly gamey games ever made. It is Bone Storm Manifest. The newer God of War games are great, but they're slower, heavier, more interested in story and character. This is the opposite. Well, there is story, but it's mainly told through shouting. And that's how I like it. What's really, really brilliant about God of War 3 is that it's the video game equivalent of smashing your Power Rangers together. Use this giant to climb to the top of Mount Olympus and kill the Greek pantheon because Kratos is, quite frankly, past the point of talking things out. A wonderfully over-the-top cinematic spectacle and the pinnacle of the bombast of the 7th generation, God of War 3 will absolutely batter your circle button, but you won't mind one bit. Oh heavens, verily we must venture once more. Beyond the memes, the mods, the frankly still outrageously unbalanced RC missions and everything else, it can be easy to overlook just how influential and groundbreaking San Andreas was back in 2004. It may also be easy to look at the graphics nowadays and not be too impressed, but the jump between 3 and Vice City and then this made you think magic was real, and it still has so many light RPG-ish mechanics that for some reason developers just gave up on. Yes, you may want to play GTA 4 or 5 or maybe even 6 if that's somehow out, if you're watching this video after it's released, hopefully for a normal amount of money, but San Andreas released at that wonderful intersection when you could have fidelity and experimental gameplay, not just one of them. Playing this now will help you appreciate just that we've lost a little bit of something in open world games. You know, there's a point with most players with Gran Turismo 4 where you realise it completely has you. Buy a slightly better car, tweak it a bit, take it out, realise you've overcooked a corner, and go again. Hours and hours disappeared like that in 2004, and they still can 2 decades later. License tests aren't throwaway tutorials as they actually teach you how to drive properly. Endurance races feel like a proper commitment. Even browsing the used car lot becomes a thing in itself, checking back to see what's rotated in. That's why people still hold it up. It's probably the last time Gran Turismo felt completely focused on just being a driving game. You know, with nothing else bolted on, no live service nonsense, you bought the game and worked through everything like the Stig with a can of As the Value energy drink in your hand. And honestly, there's still a strong case for it being the best racing game ever. Let's Fandango back to Will for the next game.
Grim Fandango was one of the last traditional adventure games created by famed 90s studio LucasArts. A stylish point-and-click adventure, albeit one that used tank controls, its film noir setting mixed with Day of the Dead folklore really helped define it as a unique and interesting game. The writing is sharp, witty, and character-driven, and feels like the team had taken a step up from the likes of Day of the Tentacle, Sam & Max, and Monkey Island. Manny Calavera is one of the all-time great gaming protagonists. His delivery is spot on and works perfectly within the world of Grim Fandango. He's funny, charming, and brave. Easily one of the best characters you can spend a few hours with. It's a cult classic which for me personally signalled the end of the golden age of point-and-click adventures. Despite being over 25 years old, the world of Grim Fandango still feels unique and fresh.
Supergiant billed Hades as the godlike roguelike, which is probably the best tagline for this Greek epic, as there's arguably never been a better roguelike. Yeah, you might see other roguelikes in this video, but few have this much dialogue, build variety, or absolute flirty filth. If you want to experience a roguelike that uses the gameplay formula to tell a phenomenal story, Hades is pretty much unbeaten. Hades actually follows Zagreus, son of the Lord of the Underworld, who's quite frankly a bit sick of life in the House of Hades, so he's making a break for it. Unless you're perfect at the game, you're not making out on run 1, but you can get stronger and unlock new weapons each run, and speak to the house residents to form bonds every time you return. It's a hypnotic cycle that'll easily become your newest obsession.
I still remember the pain-inducing wait for Half-Life 2 after playing the original back in the 90s. It was a long-awaited release and it absolutely delivered. Half-Life 2 really nailed seamless storytelling without the need for cutscenes, instead relying on environmental storytelling and an ambient world narrative. It also pushed physics in games forward in a huge way, best demonstrated through the gravity gun, which lets you manipulate objects in the world around you in creative and often chaotic ways. The game is perfectly structured from start to finish. There's no padding here, no fat on the bone. It's all meat. It changed the way we looked at first-person shooters and influenced countless games that followed. It's still well worth playing today, still feels modern and exciting, and remains one of the best first-person shooters ever made. The next one's not too bad either, Jimmy.
Yeah, not bad at all. It's a shame though that Halo doesn't have the same quality and cultural appeal that it did during the 2000s. When the first game burst onto the scene on the OG Xbox, it really was the combat evolved that it pitched itself as, and each game afterwards built on that formula in a huge way. Well, you could put any of the first 3 Halo games here. Halo 3 was the culmination of that, finishing off the original trilogy of Master Chief with huge graphical improvements, new weapons, and some of the best multiplayer ever made. The campaign, showcasing the end of Chief's fight with the original Covenant and the Flood, is filled from start to finish with amazing levels and great set pieces, while the 10 out of 10 multiplayer is what ensured players would stick around for years after. New additions like Forge and Theatre Mode really showed that Halo was ahead of its time regarding user-generated content as well. It's perhaps the perfect game, but so are ODST and Reach as well. Play all 3 and the first 2 games, but then maybe stop at Halo 4. Just stop there. Hitman World of Assassination might have one of the most confusing names going. Right, so it's basically Hitman 2016, Hitman 2 and Hitman 3 all rolled into one, renamed, packaged and presented like it was always meant to be this single thing. It started though as an episodic release, turned into a trilogy and then got folded back into itself like some sort of stealthy Ouroboros. You're getting a huge sandbox of missions where you drop into these dense clockwork levels and work out how to take targets out without causing a scene or causing a massive one if you fancy it. You're eavesdropping, disguising yourself, setting up ridiculous accidents, and having a great time. It started during that brief period where episodic gaming was trying to be the next big thing, then gradually shifted into something closer to a live service. So it's a pretty interesting game alone from just a purely historical perspective. Pretty good sweetener that it's one of the best stealth packages around as well, I guess. For many, Hotline Miami, or me, you may if you're Italian, was a bit of an inflection point in the whole indie game industry. Indies had something of a reputation for being sometimes twee, jaunty, like old ye olden games. Hotline Miami though, it'll let you stomp on people's heads. A top-down action game with insta-kill for you and your enemies, Hotline Miami rode the rise of 80s synthwave popularised by Drive in 2011 to create something that felt completely fresh and utterly addictive. You see, you will die a lot here, at least like 10 times for most levels. But learning enemy patterns and when to bash open doors, chuck weapons and blast your shotgun made Hotline Miami feel like the modern puzzle action game millions didn't know they needed. It and its sequel are well worth numbing your legs on the toilet for today, and always will be. Timeless, brilliant design inside and out.
Quite the line there, Jimmy. Miami by Will Smith. Playdead's follow-up to its landmark indie game Limbo, Inside takes what its predecessor brought to the table and piles on the suffering. You play as a nameless boy as he sneaks through a dark and bleak world. There's absolutely no dialogue and everything is told visually. Gameplay is immensely simple, with running and jumping being almost the only things you need to do, aside from interacting with the odd object or switch. It certainly feels like a throwback to the cinematic platformers of old, and there is an element of trial and error gameplay. Despite being bleak, Inside is beautiful. Its dark, muted palette is oppressive and industrial, but each part of the game feels eloquently designed, as if it were a painting or theatrical set. Inside might be a short experience, but it's one that will stay with you long after it's finished, and leave you with many more questions than answers. How did Sega ever fall so far with games like Jet Set Radio? This era of Sega was creating some amazing games, and Jet Set Radio was certainly one of the best. You skate and tag graffiti across vibrant, Tokyo-inspired futuristic levels, and it all feels fresh, exciting and vivid. It was right at the forefront of cel-shaded visuals, and while it isn't a style I particularly like very much, it works perfectly here and helps the game look fantastic even all these years later. It has a wonderful iconic soundtrack that's well worth checking out, and if you don't mind going the extra mile, tracking down those Japanese CDs is absolutely worth it. It's rebellious, full of personality, and a genuinely fun game to play. Its style has influenced games for years, and you can see that clearly in titles like Bomb Rush Cyberpunk. It's pure style, and it holds up beautifully today. Jet Set Radio is absolutely a journey worth taking.
Ugh, there's real beauty in the quiet sometimes. Just go to a beach and sit down for a bit to see what I mean, or watch a football match at Manchester City Stadium. Video games often tend to have this mainstream view of being loud and obnoxious, perpetuated by games like COD and FIFA and the like. But the beautiful thing about video games is that they can be so much more than just that. That game company's journey was the first time I think I really started viewing video games as art. It's a simple experience with you mostly walking forward as a traveller wearing a lovely scarfy outfit. You chirp and you jump, and that's about it. But you can also meet other players and find more wordless connection with them than in any other game. I can't say too much more really, even if it's not the type of game you usually play. Journey is really the epitome of what this video is all about.
This GameCube/PS2 part rail shooter, part puzzler, all bonkers game from Grasshopper Manufacture really turned heads. You play Harmon Smith, an elderly assassin who has 7 different personalities, the titular Killer 7. And the story follows geopolitics, conspiracies and reality versus illusion. Probably one of the most unique games of all time, you travel over set routes and scan for invisible enemies, targeting their weak points to take them out. Each of Harmon's personalities plays out in a different way, adding a sense of variety to the proceedings. However, it's the art that really stands out here. Minimalist visuals, which are high contrast and cel-shaded, with heavy use of blacks, whites and other bold colours. It looks more like a comic book than a video game. Suda51's original art piece Killer 7 is definitely worth experiencing. It's like nothing else. It might have been better with Daffy Duck though.
Did I get my ducks mixed up when I wrote that duck joke? Perhaps. But at least I didn't say Howard the. Right, you will need to play the first Kingdom Hearts game to figure out what's going on here, and even then that might not be enough. But everything does feel way smoother here than in the first game. You're bouncing between enemies, hitting those reaction commands when they pop up, and suddenly a normal fight turns into this big cinematic moment without you really thinking about it. And the drive forms are basically the game letting you mess about in different ways. But, you know, the real draw of this game is just how wonderful this weird mashing of licenses feels. Before the metaverse, before every property ever being in Fortnite, soloing Sephiroth was the peak. Excited to take on the old woman from Coco in the 4th game. Biggest strength of the 7th console generation was how it pioneered the online co-op genre, making it accessible for more than just PC players. Halo 3 was among the first online co-op games most who grew up in the Xbox Live generation played, but if it wasn't that, chances are it was probably Left 4 Dead. The game that inspired zombie horde shooters, though weirdly zombies did come to COD in World at War just a week earlier. Left 4 Dead was pure lightning in a bottle, as proved by the fact that Turtle Rock couldn't replicate it at all with Back 4 Blood. And remember that? Though the first L4D introduced the formula of 4 players surviving against an onslaught of zombies, infected, it was Left 4 Dead 2 that really improved things. More characters, more levels, with the old levels added later as a free update, more weapons including special heavy weapons and melee, and more special infected to deal with made Left 4 Dead 2 the complete package. Consider the groundbreaking AI, and everything afterwards has just been a bit of a pale imitation. Anyone who dares to say that all fighting games are the same clearly hasn't played a tag fighter versus any kind of 1v1 fighter. The skills required, the presentation, and everything that could be different is different, making for an experience that's wholly unique. The other great thing about tag fighters is that they lend themselves well to stupidly ambitious crossovers, and nothing has ever exemplified that as much as Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Far from just the second collaboration between the Japanese developer and the comics giant, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 would set the tone going forward, offering flashy 3v3 combat with a huge roster of characters. It was messy, broken in places, sure, but it put fun at the forefront, offering a spectacle unlike all other fighting games. Quite frankly, tag fighters have been chasing this shadow ever since. Just be careful trying to take this one online, unless you want to immediately refund. There have been 2 superheroes that have really set at the forefront of gaming in terms of quality and appeal, and we've already mentioned one of them. You might remember it. It's got bats in it. Naturally, the other is Spider-Man, with the 6th generation Spider-Man 2 from Treyarch being the first superhero game to truly nail the feeling of playing as a superhero. But Insomniac's take on the iconic wall crawler in Marvel Spider-Man is the epitome of the webhead's video games, improving the gameplay while telling the best story yet. Instead of focusing on yet another origin story with socially awkward Peter struggling in school, Marvel Spider-Man follows Peter years into his wall-crawling career, telling a story that manages to appeal to new Spider-Man fans without patronising diehards. Sure, you might see some of the twists coming if you've been around before, but you're going to be emotionally invested by the end. Those final cutscenes had quite the effect on us, right, Will?
Everybody shut up, Garrus is speaking. Mass Effect 2 managed to fix some of the more rough parts of the original game, and while it didn't have the weight of having to finish off the story in a satisfactory way, just like the third game did, it allowed Mass Effect 2 to focus on the bonds with these weirdos. Its brilliant and eclectic cast feel unique and different. Just like I'd emptied my action figure toy box out and everyone is going on a space adventure. It manages to feel like you're in the greatest sci-fi of the past, somehow like Star Trek, Star Wars and Firefly all rolled into one. In Mass Effect, decisions matter, sometimes in minor ways, but often it's life or death. There's no guarantee your crew will make it to the end of the game. One of the best cinematic action RPGs of all time. After I saw the amazing cinematic trailer for Max Payne in 1999, I knew that gaming and movies were closer than ever before. It's not a lie that Max Payne took great inspiration from the likes of The Matrix and Hard Boiled. Max of Max Payne was a grimacing New York cop, framed and on the run in a snowbound city, and we're going to clear his name by slow motion side diving wherever possible and unloading endless amounts of lead into the criminals that lurk in the dark corners of the Big Apple. Max Payne popularised fast and uncompromising shootouts, dual wielding and of course the aforementioned bullet time slow motion. It's gritty noir style reinforced with comic book panels that relay the plot. It was one of the first modern third person shooters that deserves your time. Here's hoping we get the remake soon.
Mega Man X feels like Capcom looked at the original series and went, you know what, let's actually move this forward a bit. It's got the same basic idea, you pick a boss, nick their weapon and repeat, but everything around it just is way sharper and faster, and pointier actually. Giving X a dash and a wall jump sounds small, but it actually completely changes how it plays. You were never really like plodding around through the levels before, but now you're zipping about, climbing walls, cutting through enemies in a way the old games never really allowed. It feels more aggressive, a bit more less stop-start. It also softens some of the rough edges. You've got upgrades to find, armor pieces that make a real difference, and it's a bit more forgiving without losing that, big challenge. It's a template of how to modernize the series without losing what made it so good. Mega Man X has been aped countless times, but as DMX said in his seminal classic X Gon Give It To Ya, I forgot. Now look, me personally, my favourite game ever is Metal Gear Solid 2, but if I want to get you to join this weird, confusingly urination-heavy cult, Snake Eater is absolutely the point where you need to jump on and hold on for dear life. The chronological start of the saga, Snake Eater took some of the loudest complaints about not playing as Solid Snake much in the second game and just made you not play as him at all, but playing as his dad was not a bad substitution. As well as somehow squeezing even more out of the PS2 graphically, Snake Eater also added fantastic mechanics like camouflage, diet, injuries, and a cleavage camera to take things up a few rungs on the endless ladder of innovation. What a thrill. Come for the snakes, stay for the snakes, oops, everything you love is now snakes. Metroid Prime is still one of the best examples of a series making the jump from 2D to 3D. It could have easily turned into a standard shooter, but instead it keeps that slow, exploratory feel. You're wandering through Talon 4, scanning things, unlocking paths, and gradually piecing the pieces together in your head. Remembering them, then coming back later with the right upgrade is a bloody good hook. Same loop as the old games, just translated properly into 3D space for the GameCube. The atmosphere is really what will get you here. It feels properly alien, quiet, a bit eerie, but at the same time you want to keep pushing forward just to see what's next. And yeah, later entries started poking at the formula a bit more, but this one just nails it. Metroid Prime is still an unsettlingly beautiful game that everyone needs to try. And hey, if you want to put Super Metroid in here instead, that's fine by me.
Who knew when I bought this in beta for about £7 that it would go on to become one of the biggest games ever made? And somehow all these years later, I'm still playing it. It's the ultimate sandbox experience. You can explore, build, survive, it's totally your choice. In creative mode, it's basically a real world Lego set where you can build whatever you want. In survival, it becomes something a bit harsher. It's you against the environment. And if you're brave enough to try hardcore mode, one wrong move means your world is gone forever. There are limitless possibilities in Minecraft, and with mods, you can push it even further. It's massive, constantly evolving, and still receiving major updates today that keep expanding on what's possible. How replayable is it? It's endless. You can play forever. I'll see you on the block.
In fighting games generally, there is the big three. You got Street Fighter, Tekken, and Mortal Kombat. Yes, the other two will be featuring later on, but for now it's all about Mortal Kombat. Trying to pick one specifically though, that's the challenge. The original trilogy, especially MK2 and 3, are fantastic, and Shaolin Monks is a brilliant co-op game that deserves attention too, but for our money, Mortal Kombat 2011, or Mortal Kombat 9, is the truest distillation of the series as a whole. The first reboot of the franchise, MK9, retells the events of the first three games, albeit a bit off because of time shenanigans. It's the game that really cemented NetherRealm as the premier fighting games with story modes developer, with everyone else following suit afterwards, but the core gameplay, fatalities, and extra modes are filled with the zany MK fun you'd remember from the arcade versions. Nowadays, it's just a bit too serious. Hey look, Nier Automata is a brilliant game, but let's not forget the first Nier either. It's wonderful and introduced the world to the multiple playthroughs add more detail loop that made Nier a huge success. Just sneaking that in before we talk about the Nier that everyone loves. Despite Protagonist 2B earning a reputation in gaming as that one character added to literally anything in order to pop a rating, Nier Automata is still one of the most celebrated and beloved RPG/character action hybrids ever. A story of a war between androids and aliens is merely just the background for an exploration of existentialism, and yeah, the idea of androids maybe dreaming of electric sheep isn't the most original, but it's the first game to properly explore this dichotomy through the medium of video games. Sure, they made it into an anime, but this is a story that needs to be experienced as a game. When the credits first roll, it's really just starting. Papers, Please sounds like the dullest idea imaginable. Give it an hour and it turns into something you can't stop thinking about. You're sat in a booth all day checking documents, spotting mistakes, deciding who gets through and who doesn't. And then the wrinkles just keep on coming. You get more roles, more paperwork, less time. You start rushing, making small errors, getting fined, and suddenly you're deciding whether to cut corners just to keep your family fed. It's about what you're willing to do when the pressure is on. Do you let someone through because they seem desperate, even if their papers don't match? Or do you play it safe and follow the rules? You should play Papers, Please because it puts you in a situation most games won't touch, and then leaves you to deal with the consequences. Persona might just be the most popular modern-ish RPG. Sure, the series has roots tracing back to the early 90s, but the Persona series really only took off in the eyes of many with Persona 3 in the mid-2000s. Swap that one or Persona 4 in here instead if you like, but Atlus gave players a wonderful blend of dungeon crawling RPG with social links and time management mechanics that has become the Persona trademark in subsequent games, with Persona 5 Royal being the culmination of it all. Following Joker, a high school kid sent to a different area because he got in trouble, Joker quickly makes new friends and finds a way to reach the metaverse, where shadow versions of despicable people in the real world run rampant. As a team, you'll storm their metaverse palaces, change their hearts, and force them to confront their sins, all through amazing turn-based RPG mechanics. Blink and lose 100 hours of your life. More or less a spiritual successor to the abandoned Wario line of platformers, Pizza Tower looks like complete nonsense, and to be fair it mostly is, but it's very enjoyable nonsense. You're blasting through levels as Peppino, grabbing everything that isn't nailed down, smashing enemies out the way, and trying to keep a combo going before it all falls apart. Once it gets going, the game basically dares you to keep up with it. At first it feels a bit all over the place and your eyes will probably hurt, but then you begin to understand the flow, when to dash, when to turn it around, how to keep that combo alive, and now you're flying through stages like Taz the Tasmanian Devil with anxiety problems. Pizza Tower is worth playing just to see someone do what Nintendo don't. Or won't, Nintendo won't, for some reason. Pokemon Gold and Silver would arguably be the two greatest Pokemon games ever already, but if you have the chance to bring Sudowoodo to even more stunning life, you take it. You are still going through Johto, collecting badges, dealing with Team Rocket, and then heading into Kanto afterwards. But loads of small annoyances from the originals are just gone, helping it to feel properly timeless. Then there's things like the Pokewalker, extra events, and just more to do across the board. For as tempting as it might be to pick up the newer Pokemon games because the graphics are shinier, maybe only slightly, Heart Gold and Soul Silver for us still represent the dream of catching them all like no game ever has. Also, you can see these games without a lamp now. Bonus. In a perfect universe, we'd have seen new Portal games every couple of years since the release of Portal 2. Sure, it probably would have been hard to write stories and jokes as endlessly hilarious as the first two Portal games, but frankly there hasn't been a puzzle game that truly walks the line as effectively between difficult yet satisfying to solve like Portal has. The first Portal is the classic that introduced the world to the antics of Aperture Science, but it's the sequel that's truly unmissable stuff. It's the two-player online co-op that's the real highlight though, as you'll need to work together to solve some real brain teasers. Of all the games in this video, Portal 2 might be the best one to convince a non-gamer on what this hobby is all about, and there's no greater praise than that. Something cake. Project Zomboid is basically the game for anyone whose mind has ever drifted while you've wondered how you'd fare in a zombie apocalypse. Considering how I died one time after burning my house down because I overcooked some frozen shrimp, the game gives some pretty compelling answers. This is a game I could frankly play every day if I didn't have much else going on. I even made a super secret Project Zomboid channel last year. It was so secret because nobody watched it. It will absolutely consume you if you let it as a game. Just trying to survive a bit longer or build yourself a safe house or even just become a master fisherman, there are thousands of different ways of approaching every playthrough. Just remember though that you will die in often very silly annoying ways, and that's just part of the experience. It won't suck any less each time, and that's what gives every action so much weight. Don't expect it to ever get a full release though. The best part about the sequel actually being a prequel? Well, you can play the sequel without having to worry about things getting spoiled for you. What fun! With that in mind, if you haven't played Red Dead Redemption 2 yet, get it down your goddamn neck already. Yeah, it's slow compared to other open worlds, especially Rockstar's own GTA, but this is a game that thrives when you really invest the time into the world, characters, and story. Playing as Arthur Morgan during some of the dying days of the Wild West, you're a key figure in the Dutch Van der Linde gang as they struggle to find a place in an increasingly civilized world. Over the course of a 50+ hour story, Morgan confronts mortality, morality, and more as tensions within the gang and external pressures turn cracks into fractures. It's a game you won't soon forget, and you'll understand why people always compare every AAA open world game ever to it still. One of my fondest ever childhood memories is loading up the Resident Evil GameCube remake for the first time with my mate and watching the zombie rise from the gurney. We looked at each other and realised we'd made a massive mistake. Still the scariest game in the series and best pure survival horror game ever, our remake is arguably the greatest remake of all time across any medium. It's basically exactly what the first game would have been with better tech and also better voice acting, but not by much. As old as it may seem now to some, our remake has an incredible, untouchable vibe. Also, if you're talking about games you have to play before you die, you have to start here to respect just how wildly experimental and expansive this insane series truly is. Right, time to pass you back to Will for a bit. I'm guessing he was building, a dog in Minecraft or something?
Two dogs, actually. Shadow of the Colossus remains a haunting minimalist classic, a game that can feel empty but not in a bad way. The feeling of loneliness and oppression is very real throughout. The game doesn't feature traditional enemies, only giant boss encounters, the Colossi, that you must take down and defeat, for reasons that aren't entirely clear. It's a lonely and atmospheric world, and one that doesn't seem to have much going on, but constantly feels like there's something more beneath the surface. The narrative is subtle and emotional, something that would become the hallmark of games from Team Ico, led by Fumito Ueda. Every encounter feels epic and monumental. Defeating a Colossi genuinely feels like an achievement. It was a landmark artistic game on the PS2, and there's never been nothing quite like it since. It's bleak, lonely, and unforgettable. A game that leaves you wanting more.
The amazing thing about horror games is just how fluid they can be, more so than any other genre, you could argue. Some act as metaphors, others are blunt as a butter knife, but Signalis is something else. A modern retro horror that takes after the PS1 classics, Signalis feels fresh and vintage at the same time. You're traversing a mining colony where everything is wrong and screaming at you while you try and figure out exactly what it is you're doing here. There's an inventory system, limited ammo, puzzles, a lot of backtracking, the usual, but it's so open to interpretation in its storytelling that pretty much everyone who plays it will be getting through its end credits like this. Hey, speaking of horror games that will tax your mental health,
Yes, Silent Hill 2 remains one of the best horror games ever made, and easily the best in the series. Its recent remake has made it more accessible to modern players, but the original still holds up as something truly special. Focusing on themes of guilt, grief and trauma, we follow James Sunderland as he travels to Silent Hill after receiving a letter from his deceased wife, asking him to meet her there. While Silent Hill 1 established the tone of the series, Silent Hill 2 ramps up the oppressiveness, often feeling deeply unsettling even when nothing is happening. It's iconic, disturbing, and features some of the most recognisable monsters in gaming history. It remains the gold standard for horror storytelling, emotionally devastating and completely timeless. Whether you play the original or the remake, just make sure you play it.
every slightly backachy, cranky 30-something dude remembers where they were the first time they played a Sonic game. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is probably the best of the bunch. The spin dash alone changed everything, giving you control over your speed instead of waiting for it, and that sense of momentum basically became Sonic going forward. Loads of games have tried to copy that flow since, but very few get it right in the same way. And the levels, well, the levels are some of the best in platformer history. Chemical Plant is probably the standout, fast and just memorable in a way that most platformers aren't. Casino Night's got that weird bouncy rhythm to it, and Emerald Hill is basically the perfect opener without just redoing Green Hill. It's not just nostalgia talking here either, it still feels really good to play. You pick it up, get into its rhythm, and suddenly you're hearing the soundtrack in your dreams. Look, even we're guilty of perpetuating the idea of a big three in fighting games, and not including Soul Calibur in that. It's a shame when Soul Calibur 1 is considered among the best reviewed games of all time. Soul Calibur 2 might not be as fondly reviewed, even if it's the difference between 98 and 93 on Metacritic, but for our money, it exists among the best fighting games of all time. The premier weapons-based fighting game Soul Calibur 2 offers more ridiculous looking characters with massive weapons beating the crap out of each other, only with more modes, weapons and arenas this time. Oh, and Soul Calibur 2 introduced guest characters into the series with the GameCube version including Link from The Legend of Zelda. Perfect, 10 out of 10, no notes. The gameplay is fast, easy to learn, yet hard to master, and is perfect for anyone from button mashers to fighting game sickos. Do you have an emotional block? Does the ending of Gladiator do absolutely nothing to you anymore? Well, you, my friends, need to play Spiritfarer. Basically, you are the Animal Crossing version of Charon, as you guide lost souls to the other side via your ever-expanding boat. Over time, you grow to learn more about your passengers and what happened to them, but the most valuable thing you can learn from Spiritfarer is the importance of letting go. Yes, this game is part builder, part farming sim, part visual novel, but it's fully an emotional armada that's coming to sink all your friendships. It's like the incinerator scene in Toy Story 3, except it has the balls to break your heart over and over again. Essential stuff. Splinter Cell Chaos Theory is stealth at its most chunky and deliberate, especially compared to the brilliant nonsense of Metal Gear Solid. This one rarely stops Sam Fisher in his shadowy tracks to talk about Godzilla for 20 minutes for one. You're just dropped into a level and left to figure it out, with most of the story happening in the background while you get on with the job, one split jump at a time. Staying in the shadows, moving slowly, watching patrols, deciding whether to slip past someone or deal with them quietly. Even today, it has some of the best enemy AI around and is packed with details most modern AAA games don't bother with. You can ghost through levels without touching anyone, and it's basically the perfect game for stealth purists as a result. A giant metal dinosaur wouldn't hurt though, just saying. Star Wars RPG. That should be enough to sell 10 million copies on its own, right? But when you chuck in a BioWare at their peak and choices that actually matter, well, you've got one of the greatest games ever with just an incredible amount of dialogue and choice for the time of its release. You start off as just another amnesiac nobody caught up in a war, bouncing between planets, building a crew, and slowly getting pulled deeper into it all. Eventually, you'll find out who you really are, and well, it's still one of the greatest moments in gaming history. Yes, maybe a remake would have tightened up the slightly clunky looking combat these days, but there's no doubt any remake would struggle to capture the atmosphere and feel of this masterpiece. Just try to not lose all your money in a game of Berserk, or 20.
Stardew Valley is just really nice. It's a game about building a farm and making friends with the people in the nearby town. And it's just lovely. While it's a spiritual successor to games like Harvest Moon, it has grown into something all of its own and has played a huge role in the rise of cozy games. Those warm, comforting experiences that people can enjoy at their own pace. It features farming, of course, but there's also fishing, mining, combat and relationships. There is a surprising amount of depth here, and there's always something new to work towards. There's always another task, another conversation, another goal. The whole game has this warm, comforting feeling, kind of like a pair of familiar slippers you can slip back into, even after months away. It revitalized the farming sim genre and helped push cozy games into the spotlight. It's comfort gaming at its very finest and strikes all the right notes.
No one would disagree that Street Fighter of some kind should be in a video like this. You know, it is the biggest and most recognisable fighting game series of all time, and for good reason. The issue, like with Mortal Kombat, comes with picking just one game in the series to highlight. Street Fighter 2 and its various iterations gave the franchise the foundation it needed to grow, while Street Fighter 6 is arguably the best jumping on point there's been. For us though, there is only one answer, and that is, of course, Third Strike. Considered to be somewhat of an outcast of the series at the time, Capcom's refusal to abandon Street Fighter 3 after the new generation led us to Second Impact and, most importantly, Third Strike. Mechanically impressive, with huge opportunities for skill expression and training while also offering the rare case of style and substance, Third Strike is an absolute chef's kiss of a game. Better get training though, you've only got like, 30 years to catch up. Streets of Rage 2 is the moment beat-em-ups peaked. You're walking right, scoffing chicken, picking up pipes, suplexing blokes into the pavement, and then you pick up and play Streets of Rage 2! What a revelation. Hits have serious heft to them, enemies react properly, and you very quickly lock in and get blasting. With your fists. It's tough, but not often cheap. You and a mate, or just you if you're stubborn, can either become the greatest tag team since the Legion of Doom and batter everything, or just become Jay and Silent Bob and blunder through it. You will still have a great time. And then there's the music. Oh, the music. That Yuzo Koshiro soundtrack is doing after work, honestly. It's an all-time whipper. It's a game that will just never age. Usually water sections in games are ones to dread, like in Sonic or Vice City. Water is wet and irritating, and it gets everywhere. But in Subnautica, pretty much everything is water, and you know what? It's actually quite amazing. You crash land on an alien planet, and from the humble beginnings of your pod, you must branch out and find a way to survive among the marine life while also trying to find a way home. But it won't be long until you're forced to go into the depths, and let's just say Free Willy is not waiting for you. While not an outright horror game, Subnautica offers a terror of the unknown unlike much else. It's a survival game for people who hate survival games with a hook that'll keep you around for possibly hundreds of hours. Suikoden 2 is the sort of RPG that sneaks up on you, unless you're buying it physically on PS1, in which case it kind of shouts, crikey. You go into it expecting a fairly standard war story, and then a few hours later you're completely invested in a conflict and all these little weirdos you've collected like Pidgeys and Caterpies. You start off as a kid caught in the middle of two sides tearing each other apart, and it evolves into a story of loyalty and betrayal and people ending up on the wrong side of things. It doesn't pull its punches either. What you're actually doing is building an army as much as a party, recruiting characters, expanding your base, watching it slowly turn into something that feels like yours, and then rapidly falls apart as your favourites permanently die. More of that, please.
Yes, Jimmy Moordeath. Super Mario World is clearly the best 2D Mario game ever made and could be the best Mario game, full stop. It was easily the peak of Mario in the 90s, and even more modern entries like New Super Mario Bros. Or Super Mario Wonder haven't quite managed to better it. Its platforming perfection set across the colourful world of Dinosaur Land. It introduced Yoshi, the lovable dinosaur who would go on to become one of the most iconic characters in the series. And of course, King Koopa, Bowser, is back kidnapping Princess Peach as per usual. Controls are tight and responsive, it's more refined than ever, and a clear step up from Super Mario Bros. 3. The level design is creative and varied, featuring standard horizontal levels, vertical climbs, secret exits, and hidden paths that encourage exploration. It's a game that begs to be 100% completed. It defined 2D platformers and remains one of the best games of the 1990s, and arguably one of the best games ever made.
Sorry guys, it really does feel like we bunched up all the classic fighting games, doesn't it? Shame they didn't call it Bekken. I loved Bekken Bombardment. Unlike other fighting games we've mentioned, there's only one super obvious contender in the Tekken series that deserves to be spotlighted. Other games in the series, like Tekken 5 or Tag Tournament specifically, are also phenomenal fighting games and celebrations of the series as a whole, but Tekken 3 is nothing short of a cultural moment for both the franchise and for PlayStation as a whole. The argument could easily be made that the PS1 just wouldn't be half as successful without its near-perfect Tekken 3 port. As a game, Tekken 3 was simply more of the same 3D martial arts action that captivated arcades in the past. It's just that everything took a huge step forward in Tekken 3. More characters, more moves, better graphics, and even more modes like fan favourites Tekken Ball and Tekken Force helped make Tekken 3 feel like the complete fighting game package. It's the King of Iron Fist for a reason. A game so good that Telltale based the entirety of their business model around games just like it. Telltale's The Walking Dead is probably the best thing in the massive, messy TWD universe, minus season 1 of the show probably. For better or worse, a massively influential title for episodic gaming, you play as Lee, an escaped convict who happens across an abandoned young girl as the zombie apocalypse breaks out. The pair develop a bond as they learn to live among the dead and other people, some begrudgingly. Ugh. It's a simple game at its core, and the Telltale illusion of choice has been shattered after all these years, but the relationship between Lee and Clem carries it very, very far. I will keep this one short, just like her hair. Play this game.
The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim is probably the ultimate open-world RPG. Built upon Bethesda's trademark and somewhat controversial creation engine, Skyrim is the culmination of the Elder Scrolls series thus far. Each game built upon the last, moving from a D&D inspired RPG in the early days, right through to a more streamlined action RPG that we all know today. Well, we've not had a new one in over a decade, but that's another story. The frozen norths of Skyrim manages to feel both oppressive and grand, a land of adventure filled with locations and stories to discover. After hundreds of hours I've put into Skyrim, I am certain I have not seen it all. Skyrim has really helped expand the Elder Scrolls into a huge mainstream success. Head out into the wilderness and avoid them knee arrows. You'll no doubt not be able to see the forest for the trees once this one sinks its teeth into you. The Forest is a survival sandbox game that you can really get your teeth into. While it might initially feel like your dad's Minecraft, it quickly proves itself to be something more intense. You crash land on a mysterious island and must create your own camp as well as craft items to survive. At the same time, you're trying to uncover the island's secrets and find your kidnapped child. The cannibals and mutants that inhabit the island are intelligent and terrifying, with advanced AI that sees them climb over walls, smash through defences and actively hunt you down. The atmosphere is one of constant unease, especially in the early game where resources are limited. At night the game becomes even more intense and you're often woken by nearby enemies you can't quite see through the thick darkness. The Forest remains a standout in the survival genre, delivering emergent horror at its very finest.
Look, it might now have been re-released more times than Fleetwood Mac when Record Store Day comes around, but The Last of Us still remains a special game. I remember thinking back in 2013 that Naughty Dog had properly cracked how to make a dramatic dynamic that's just as engrossing as what's on the big screen and arguably surpassed that medium. The relationship between Joel and Ellie here is so compelling that it makes the second game hit all the harder. And then you've got hitting dude hard with bricks and trying to deal with infected buggers made of mushrooms. Filled with moments of breathtaking beauty and shocking horror, The Last of Us really needs to be experienced at least once in any of the 60 different ways you can now.
No one could have quite predicted what Nintendo had in store with Breath of the Wild. The Legend of Zelda series has been a fantastic constant for years, but the formula had started to feel a bit predictable. Breath of the Wild threw that out completely and reinvented the series as a fully open world experience. For me, it's a reinvention of open world design, offering true freedom in exploration. The world is handcrafted so wherever you stand, you can see something that catches your eye and makes you want to go there. The best part, you usually can. Link's climbing ability means almost nowhere is off limits. The physics-driven interactions are a real highlight and leads to some brilliant moments. While the world can feel a little empty at times, that makes the pockets of civilization feel more meaningful. It's influenced countless games since and stands as a modern masterpiece, but trade in just about any other Zelda game here instead if you want. They're all pretty good. The Messenger is proof that if the big boys won't do it, indie companies will take up the reins. The Messenger is a Ninja Gaiden inspired 2D platformer, featuring tight platforming and combat with a steep learning curve that will challenge you early on. Far from being a mere homage to 80s video game design, the Messenger allows you to purchase upgrades in the in-game shop and introduces new mechanics such as time shifting and Metroidvania gameplay. While it clearly wears its 8-bit inspirations on its sleeve, it's also very self-aware, packed with humour and witty writing that helps it stand out. It also features an exceptional soundtrack that you'll be whistling long after you finish playing. It's already a legendary indie title and it keeps you constantly on your toes.
Outer Wilds is basically a game about curiosity. You've got a tiny solar system, a ship that barely holds together, and 22 minutes before everything resets. You take off, pick somewhere that looks interesting, land, badly usually, and try to figure out what's going on. You read something on one planet, it points you somewhere else, that leads to another clue, and slowly you start understanding how everything shakes out. It's more about genuinely learning and using your brain box than unlocking a 5% dexterity boost on your skill tree. The game doesn't hold your hand much at all, and half the satisfaction comes from putting the pieces together without being told outright. If you like figuring things out, that's why it's an essential game to play. You don't finish it because your character gets stronger, you finish it because you understand it, one melancholy failure after another. Hey, you know what would be wild? If we brought back the original voice of the channel for the next entry. What do you think, Daryl?
Hello friends, it's your boy Daryl. I'm back, remember me? I did some voices here before, and me and Jimmy, old Jimmy boy, we used to play some Fortnite. I think we even won once. we were the absolute best at the video games. Anyways, there's a reason this game has sold more than 60 million copies. That's almost as much as the entire Metal Gear saga, by the way. Don't tell Jimmy. From the writing to the quest design to the beautiful world to the unicorn stuff. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt was an absolute kitchen sink project from, CD Projekt Red. It was so advanced compared to everything that came before that it could have been the end of them. But it wasn't. It was their coming out party. You're trying to find your adopted daughter, but that isn't really the story. You take a contract, think it's a quick job, and suddenly you're stuck in some grim little story with repercussions you don't realise for hours. The Witcher 3 raised the bar for side content to a level most games still have not matched. Ubisoft basically copied their homework with Assassin's Creed and, well, got bloody nowhere near. Well, that's it from me. You can also catch me over on Cage Rage, a Nicolas Cage podcast, and Getting Defoe You, a dedicated Defoe podcast. That's Willem Dafoe to you and I. And I was on Bargain Hunt once. Yes, I'm still going on about it 10 years later.
He was absolutely glorious in Bargain Hunt, mind you. We all watched it together. It was a big party. He only lost £10.
And with that said, we'll catch you in the next one. But until then, caw. Oh, wait, there's still more of this list left. Ignore me. Bye.
Thanks, Daryl. I only miss you when I breathe. It's funny to put together a video on games to play before you die and feature a game that its own publisher sent out to die. Titanfall 2's gameplay still feels better than basically every FPS game. You're swapping between fast, fluid pilot movement with wall running, sliding, chaining everything together, and dropping into a Titan that feels like a completely different game and just cool as hell. The campaign's why everyone goes on about the game though. It is short, but it never wastes a level. Every mission has some sort of twist, like a new mechanic, a new idea, and then it moves on before it gets old. There's a level in this one built around time switching that's still better than entire games built on the same idea. Titanfall 2 deserved better, but you won't do much better than this absolute banger in your library.
Tomb Raider 2 for my money is the peak of the original PS1 Tomb Raider run. Back then games didn't really get much coverage in the mainstream media, so imagine my surprise seeing Tomb Raider 2 being talked about on Midlands today. That's the kind of impact that this game had. We didn't have a lot of money growing up and I only really got games on special occasions, so when out of the blue my parents agreed to get me Tomb Raider 2, it was a big deal and it's what made me fall in love with the series. And Lucasade, the refreshing glucose drink. I am available for sponsorships. It built upon the original in every way, refining the controls and smoothing out some of the clunkier elements. Exploration, puzzles and combat all come together brilliantly here. The levels were expansive for the time, taking you on a globe-trotting adventure that starts and ends in China. It's not a horror game, but there are plenty of genuinely tense moments throughout. Tomb Raider 2 helped define 3D action-adventure games and remains a true classic.
Some of you are probably sad that Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 or Underground haven't been given the nod here, and if we were basing our selection on just levels alone or the strengths of its career mode, it'd probably be the case. The thing is though, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 added one trick that rendered previous games harder to go back to. The revert. Before THPS 3, there was no way to easily transition from a vert ramp to a manual and continued combo, but the revert gave players an easy way to bridge combos together. It's a small 180-degree twist, and yet it's now a fundamental part of the gameplay loop. Don't believe us? That's why the THPS 1 and 2 remakes included the revert. Checkmate. It's a brilliant addition to what was already a fantastic gameplay formula, and one you should absolutely play, especially considering the recent remakes did butcher it. And hey, basically any Tony Hawk game up until American Wasteland could go in here instead. Chuck a coin in the air and shoot at it to deflect a bullet into the heads of demons. Also make it look like a Net Your Rose game. Congratulations, you've just discovered the best indie FPS game of all time where bones are their money. Sorry, blood is their fuel. Boiling Ultra Kill down to just that does do it a bit of a disservice, to be truthful. Here, standing still is basically illegal. You're dashing, sliding, launching yourself across arenas, swapping weapons constantly and trying to keep momentum going because the second you slow down, you're in trouble, Buster. Pitching it as a character action FPS is accurate, as it feels like the weird bloody baby of Quake and Devil May Cry. Chase those high scores and try not to have an aneurysm over the absolute bedlam of what's going on in one of the greatest FPS games ever made. And it's not even finished yet. If Street Fighter 2 was an improvement on its original that also defined fighting games, the same surely applies for Uncharted 2 when it comes to action-adventure games. Basically, every game with a bit of budget wanted to be Uncharted 2 after its release in 2009, and so few came anywhere close. You're playing as Nathan again, but also you've got a big hole in your stupid body and you're on a train that's dangling off the edge of a cliff. You just can't trust her either these days. You'll be bouncing from location to location, chasing a lost city, getting into shootouts, climbing across things that are very obviously about to collapse, and somehow surviving all of it. It's basically a constant stream of set pieces stitched together, and it's the absolute epitome of a blockbuster game in more ways than one.
Undertale is a unique and subversive RPG. While it may look simple at first glance, its simplicity hides a surprising amount of depth. The biggest selling point is choice. Do you fight your enemies or do you try and understand them? You can complete the entire game without killing anyone, and that decision fundamentally changes how the game unfolds. It balances humour and emotion brilliantly, with a cast of characters that are genuinely memorable and often funny. There's a reason the community is obsessed with basically every character. Despite its simple visuals, the game has a strong sense of style, backed up by an excellent soundtrack. It's a charming, surprising and genuinely unforgettable indie game that has already been insanely influential. Final Fantasy VII made mainstream gaming stand up and pay attention to the JRPG, and proved they could shift a huge amount of copies. But while Final Fantasy VII was getting all the attention, Vagrant Story became its own cult hit and possibly the best RPG on the PS1. It has some of the most intricate mechanics on the PS1 and had a darker, more mature tone set in a rich and detailed world. The performance and storytelling feel grounded and serious in a way that really stood out in the 90s. It's also, frankly, a ridiculously good-looking game on the PS1. It's not something you can rush into, and it's easy to see why some players might bounce off it early on, but if you stick with it, it becomes incredibly rewarding and grows into a cult favourite.
I feel like a lot of the games I picked for this are kinda depressing. It's a lot cheaper than therapy, I guess. What Remains of Edith Finch might not make my childhood any better, but it did leave a profound impression on me. This is a story about belief, lineage, and some rotten bloody luck. You travel to the Finch household and discover exactly what befell each tragic member of this very endangered line. Pretty much the absolute peak of walking simulators, said non-derogatorily. What Remains of Edith Finch sees you daydreaming in a cannery, being a deep-sea creature, and swinging very high, too high. There's not a single tragedy here that won't sit with you in some way, but if you can do more than just sit in silence as the credits roll, I'll be very surprised. An absolute masterpiece and pretty definitive evidence of video games as art. Now, to close out the video, here's a series where men dress up as babies. If you're watching this, chances are pretty high that you've already had one annoying friend in your life trying to tell you to play the Yakuza / Like a Dragon / Judgment games. They probably spammed one of the 8,000 gifts from this series at you as well. That'd be a bit annoying too then, as a treat. Far from the first Yakuza game that RGG ever made, Yakuza 0 is the first game in the chronological timeline, so if you're planning on trying to get into the series, this is your most logical start. It's also the best place to start because it's widely considered to be the best game in the whole series. A dual narrative, the game follows fledgling enforcer Kazuma Kiryu and punished Yakuza turned club owner Goro Majima as they individually investigate a conspiracy that has far-reaching implications. The story is dramatic and filled with twists, but the joy of Yakuza is the ridiculous combat, mini-games and more that makes the series more than just the sum of its parts. Play it and then also the other 100 bangers we've mentioned. Go on, quit your job. You don't need the money. Outro gang, those were just 101 of our favourite games of all time that we want to recommend to you. Bear in mind, these are not the definitive 101 best games of all time. These are just games that we really love and we think that you will also love. And we want to hear what you think that we will love down in the comments down below. Also, just one last time, I really cannot thank you guys enough. All of us here cannot thank you guys enough for getting us to 100,000 subscribers. How have we done that? How have we done that? Just pure stubbornness, I think. I can't talk about it too long or I will cry big manly chunks of tears. I've been Jimmy for Cultured Vultures. It's been good to have you, and thank you for everything.